Hey guys, welcome to another video, and I'm back in DayZ, unsurprisingly, 0.63 experimental. I've been playing it a lot, getting into encounters and fighting people, and I've been struck at how different it is. It is so different. Obviously the movement is really great, but you have to think differently now. And so I thought I'd put a little video together about the changes and how you're going to have to think about combat. How the stamina system affects the combat, how the swinging affects the combat. So these are a series of points that I think are worth talking about, and it's also a question of whether actually they have a place in DayZ. They certainly make it more real, but is that what we want in this game? I don't know. But in any case, let's have a look at some of these examples. You can put your comments down below, let me know what you think. I know a lot of you haven't gone into experimental yet, so you won't have had access to this. So some of it is quite surprising, but let's take a look and maybe open up a discussion. You guys can let me know what you think as well. So before we dive into this 0.63, we need to think, don't we? We need to be aware that this is still a developing game and that ultimately things may change. Now, the way it is at the moment, I think there are some core things they're definitely not going to change or take out. They may adjust them, like things like the stamina. But what I look at next, I think it's going to be in the full release. So let's take a look. So the first thing I want to talk about is death. Pretty deep. Well, actually it's not. Because the reality of it is, in 0.63, you die pretty quickly. Now I've heard streamers discussing this, that potentially we're too weak, potentially we go to black, just that fraction too quickly. Here are some examples, and you can see it's pretty instantaneous. Sometimes you don't hear the shot. Now, I've never been shot and killed, so I don't know whether you would hear the shot or not. But in a gaming environment, it does kind of feel like this should be dealt with in some way. The second thing I'd like to bring up here is you can't escape zombies now by running. That's because you run out of stamina. So you have to be a lot more cautious as you're moving around. They're not too difficult to kill on their own, but if you get a horde, then you're in trouble. So you need to be able to get into a structure or evade them in some way, and it's very difficult. So they're much more of a threat, which I think is great. When you go into a building, they will also forget about your presence pretty quickly, so you can then move on. And I find that they do actually move on quite quickly. And I think on top of that as well, they look amazing. Their body movements are really cool. And they also go down to that kind of that animal four-leg posture, like a dog or something like that, which I think looks really scary and really, it makes it more difficult to hit. That's another thing about that whole aspect as well. So that's something that's really important to remember, and it's a big game changer. The next thing that's worth mentioning is the lock-in swing. So when you do a long swing, you charge and you swing, it locks the character into that action, which makes them vulnerable, makes you vulnerable to attack. And that is particularly detrimental when you're up against a horde of zombies, for example. And then to carry this point on, when you're hit, your body rebounds backwards and rolls away with the hit, which is, you know, what would happen. You would obviously be in a place of pain, so you would recoil from that action, which is really important to know. But what this kind of culminates in is the fact that half the time when you're in a combat situation, you're not actually going to be able to fight back. Now you can block, so that's there, but you ultimately are in a position where you could get locked. You've got to really get used to how those actions work, otherwise you're going to be in trouble. Something that may seem quite small is the fact that actually weapons spring into your arms very quickly. They just appear as if by magic. Now this is an advantage if you're looking to, say, ambush somebody. So you're talking to somebody, quickly your gun is in your hand. For me, it's not slow enough. It needs to reflect the reality that is being introduced through the stamina system. So drawing your weapon should be slower. They do spring into your hand and you can kill someone in an instant. So someone may come and say friendly, you talk to them, bang, you're dead. So that is definitely something to consider. And then potentially one of the biggest changes is the damage that you take and how it affects your posture and your movement. So not only is your stamina restricting you, but when you take a certain amount of damage, you take on a new injured posture which slows you down. So there's even less chance of escaping a combat situation. And it stops you from sprinting fast, it slows everything down, it really debilitates you. But personally I feel that this is a very real thing. In the old system you'd be hit 6-7 times and you show no signs of it, but with this you do, and you crouch down. People have seen this, it's known, but until you actually had a fair few combat encounters, you just don't realise how affecting it is to the gameplay. It really does change things. Following on from the last point, if you have taken damage, you are now a target. People prey upon the weak, and you see it now in game. If you look across and there's someone limping along, you know, especially if you're healthy, that you have the advantage. It changes the psychological element of the game in such a way that it's almost manipulative, it's almost luring. It makes you think about the whole encounter in a different way, and that's fascinating. That really has upped the game, it's upped our experience levels, and it makes for a really intriguing environment. And finally, I think something that I want to highlight is the fact that combat is just generally more dangerous. You die quicker, you get damaged, you slow down, your stamina is such that you can't get away. All in all, making the decision to go in combat should be thought about a bit more carefully now. And that's a good thing, because before it often was a combat fest. People would just go in for just for hell of it. But now those that don't think potentially are going to pay the price for that. And those that are prepared and ready, maybe the more veteran type players, people that understand the game a bit better, are going to be in a better position, arguably. So guys, there's my latest thoughts on how the combat system has changed, how these encounters take place. I hope you found it interesting. If you've got any comments, add them down below. This game is still awesome. They're still developing it, we know that, but I still love playing it, and I hope you do too. So guys, I will see you soon. Thanks again.